They're everywhere. In our shopping centres, our transport stations, all across the globe. 90 billion escalator journeys take place each year. But how safe are they? Footage has emerged of escalators spiralling out of control.
We heard this metallic clicking sound, and then it just let go.
An escalator, it goes up, it goes down. It's not supposed to do both.
Of passengers being trapped.
People weren't able to jump off in time. It was chaos.
It's every mother's worst nightmare.
And even swallowed alive.
It's not a place you want to be. It's a very hostile environment.
He's so lucky, I'd like him to pick my lottery tickets for me.
With the help of industry experts, we'll explore why these accidents happen.
It appears that the steps have actually come apart or have become unlocked.
Discover how engineers are trying to tackle these terrifying tragedies.
You can see a series of safety switches designed to make sure that if anything goes wrong, they switch off the escalator immediately.
And meet the people who know what it's like to be eaten by an escalator.
This can happen to anybody, anywhere in the world.
Throughout our modern cities, filled with high-rise buildings, we depend on escalators and lifts to move around. These seemingly reliable pieces of engineering are so integrated into our environment, we barely notice their existence. But at other times, they can be the cause of terror. At a busy metro station in Istanbul, Turkey, it's winter, and commuters are rushing on their way to work, unaware of what is about to happen. The escalator on the left is functioning normally, but the one on the right is static, so the rush hour commuters are using it like an ordinary staircase. Suddenly, it springs into life. Just as a commuter steps into a huge gaping hole that unexpectedly opens beneath his feet. He can be seen desperately trying to hold on to the handrail, but eventually he plummets into the mechanism, and the stairs close over him. But what must it be like to be trapped in the belly of an escalator?
As you can see, we've removed a few steps.
Steve Normington is the product manager at Kone, a leading manufacturer of lifts and escalators in the UK.
There's lots of pieces of moving machinery in there. In the unfortunate event that somebody actually passed through a gap in the steps, the escalator has got enough power to lift a small car, so that's not a place you want to be. It's a very hostile environment, and there's going to be no winners.
Which was the biggest fear for the emergency services in Turkey, trying to rescue the man from inside the broken escalator. Once located, the rescue workers had to resort to ripping open the sides to reach him. It took over an hour to free him, after which he was immediately taken to hospital. Unbelievably, he only suffered minor injuries. To find out what went wrong in Turkey, first we need to see how an escalator works. Mark Fairweather is the director of a vertical transport consultancy in the UK.
In this test facility, we've got the escalator running on a very slow speed, and we've taken the cover off the top chamber. The top chamber typically houses the motor, which has the braking system. It also houses the controller, which is the brains, the equipment. And you can see here the steps coming around the top and back down again on the step chain, which is moving here. And you can see a series of safety switches, which are all there designed to make sure that if anything goes wrong, they switch off the escalator immediately.
So what caused this man to fall through the steps? Jenny Baxter, head of engineering for the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, has studied the footage.
What appears to be happening is that an escalator that wasn't originally moving has too many people on it, and it has started to move, possibly undergoing some maintenance where steps have been removed, and this has led to one poor gentleman actually falling into the escalator and looking like the escalator's actually eaten him.
The Istanbul Metropolitan Municipality have since stated that a person failed to notice the warning signs and took the escalator, which was under maintenance. The steps of the escalator, which was not in service at that time, collapsed, and the person was trapped under the stairs. And Turkey isn't the only place where people have been swallowed up. In northwest China, a young girl and her friend are about to step onto a moving walkway, a mechanically flat escalator.
These you see more commonly when you're in an airport. When you step onto them, they just run across.
Patrick Carr has been an expert in escalators most of his life.
This is called a pallet. It's not called a step. So the pallets are only 2 or 3 inches thick, so they can run them much closer together.
The instant she steps on, the unthinkable happens. Her leg plunges through a panel. The force of moving parts is so great, it sucks her down. A woman sees the incident and immediately runs to help, while others appear frozen. Psychologist Emma Kenny gives some insight into why.
Bystander intervention means that if there are lots of people, everybody just kind of hopes that the person next to them will resolve the situation. But also the chemical side of the adrenaline can literally freeze you.
Miraculously, she manages to drag the girl's leg out. But her ankle is still stuck, gripped between the plates. After several agonizing moments, someone hits the emergency stop button. But how much damage has already been done to her entangled leg? When it comes to transporting large numbers of people efficiently, it's hard to beat an escalator.
Today, we live in cities that are expanding all over the world, and more frequently we have to live and work in high-rise buildings. So escalators and lifts will become increasingly part of our lives.
An escalator can move 8,000 people per hour, where an elevator can't come anywhere near that. Even a large elevator has to travel from floor to floor, open its doors, close its doors. When an escalator is continuous, you just keep taking people on and on, no problem.
But as more of us rely on these machines to move around, the chances of having an accident on them increases. In China, a girl's leg has become trapped in a moving walkway. After being dragged along for several agonizing moments, someone hits the emergency stop button.
Just bear in mind, escalators generally don't stop immediately. There's always a stopping distance. And the reason there's a stopping distance is to stop passengers being thrown off balance. So it could still take up to a metre to stop, depending on speed, or even slightly longer.
Eventually, the emergency services free the girl, and she is sent to hospital. But what caused this accident to happen?
There's either one of 2 scenarios, as far as I can see. One is there was an actual step plate or a pallet which was missing, and as the moving walkway came round, she happened to step on just as that void was there and she fell in. The other scenario is that the pallet actually gave way somehow and broke and fell apart. Most devices, whether they're an escalator or a moving walkway, will have what we call a missing step device. And it detects all the time if there's a step missing or if there's a pallet missing. And if it does, it instantly shuts off the equipment. So I don't know why those devices weren't present or weren't operational.
I think this young lady has been very lucky. It's possible that if her leg had been caught for longer and the walkway had continued to move, her injuries could have been much worse. She's lucky that it was switched off and that she got help as quickly as she did.
Sadly, for others, the outcome isn't so fortunate. It's Saturday at the Longmont shopping mall in Shanghai, China, and a cleaner is doing his rounds. Surveillance camera footage shows he's placed some form of cleaning mat onto the comb plate at the top of the machine, whilst it's running. As the janitor steps on top of it, it collides with the oncoming steps, creating a gap, which the janitor's leg then falls through.
Most escalator accidents happen either at the top or the bottom, where the angle of the escalator is changing, where the steps are changing. And what's happened here is he's put a mat on the most vulnerable place. The momentum of the escalator has driven it into the mechanisms, and it's basically dislodged a roller from the track. Then an escalator step's gone up, and you've got what we call an escalator pile-up, and he's happened to fall down into that void.
Emergency services managed to free him from the metal jaws, but at a great cost. The lower half of his leg.
Certainly, you should never be attempting to clean an escalator while it's moving.
Even if all the steps are secure, an escalator can malfunction in other devastating ways. As Brian remembers from an event that took place at the New Jersey Path station in 2013.
So it was my first morning and my first real job after college. I was excited, I was nervous. The morning rush hour trains are packed with people. So when the train arrived, all the passengers, all the workers who were getting ready to go to their offices for the day get out, and we start walking up the escalator. This station has 3 escalators that, depending on the time of day, usually 2 will run up and 1 will run down, or vice versa. Except on this day, one of the escalators was out of service, so they actually had the whole escalator closed off and all of the steps were removed from the escalator. So it was just a long open pit. I got maybe a little bit halfway up this escalator when all of a sudden it just stopped going up, but then immediately started going back.
Traveling out of New Jersey that day was Petra Domingo. She witnessed the confusion from the opposite side.
Just got on the escalator and didn't get too far down before the escalator next to me reversed. Kind of sense of commotion going on at the bottom, but it's such a steep escalator that I couldn't really see the bottom, so I didn't know what was happening.
It started to go back faster and accelerate, and people started to panic. I didn't know what to do. I was toward the top, and I was imagining there's going to be a big pileup of people at the bottom.
They were getting the worst of it because people were either bumping into them or falling on them. It was just scary because I didn't know what was wrong and why people seemed panicked.
Brian had to act fast to avoid disaster.
I decided to jump off the escalator and cling onto the gap between that escalator and the one next to it, except the one next to it was the one that was out of service. So I didn't really have an escape route. I was pretty much just stuck there, and my fear was that someone was going to slip and potentially push me into that big open pit.
What happens in situations like this, it's your instinct that takes over. A lot of human beings just follow the human being in front of them. We call it the pantomime effect. We look behind us or in front of us to see what everybody else's reaction is, and we follow in accordance to that.
Eventually, the escalator was brought to a halt. Luckily, no one was seriously injured.
You know, it worked out. It was actually a pretty cool icebreaker story for my new coworkers. I mean, obviously, an escalator, it goes up, it goes down. It's not supposed to do both.
But this is a problem that's occurring all over the world. In Hong Kong, the Langham Place shopping center is home to one of China's biggest escalators. CCTV footage captures the moment the impressive 45-meter-long moving staircase suddenly stops and immediately free falls in the opposite direction, sending passengers careening backwards at an alarming speed, causing a helpless crush of bodies at the bottom. In total, 18 people were injured, but incredibly, there were no fatalities. So what caused the escalators in Hong Kong and New Jersey to suddenly malfunction?
In these situations, we have what's called a reversal, where the escalator is moving in the up direction, and all of a sudden, for a reason, it stops and reverses and goes down.
Potentially, it could have been the main chain snapping, therefore, it lost all the traction and the escalator would have gone into a free fall mode with the weight of the people on the escalator.
It will continue throwing people off at the end until such time as the escalator comes back into balance, meaning the escalator has to be empty.
Now, there should be a brake which then applies, so there should be a device which stops it going into free fall. So what's happened, I think, in these scenarios is there's been a failure, a catastrophic failure in a component, and then, secondly, the brake hasn't engaged, which should stop the equipment.
In the case of New Jersey, officials state the malfunction could have been linked to the severe weather conditions brought about by Superstorm Sandy. But these aren't the only examples of when escalators lose control. In 2016, scores of Philadelphia Flyers hockey fans piled onto packed escalators in the city's Wells Fargo Center after a game. Suddenly, the escalators began to speed up uncontrollably, causing complete chaos on the ground. People can be seen falling over the sides while others pile into more fans at the bottom of the stairs. And 6 years earlier, An equally shocking event took place in Washington, D.C. One that John and his wife Leslie were lucky to survive.
So we came downtown because there was a rally on the mall. It was thousands and thousands of people. And so we took the metro because you can't drive when there's that many people.
At 5 p.m., John and Leslie began to make their way home.
So we went to the first metro station off of the mall, which was Smithsonian, and other people had the same idea. It was super crowded. So we decided to abandon that, and so the next one was Lampon Plaza metro station, and it was also crowded. But we decided, okay, it is what it is.
This whole platform was really wall-to-wall people. They were streaming in, from this direction, both sides of this, and all three of the escalators were all going down. So no one was leaving the station. This was simply an entrance.
The escalators were full to capacity. Like, you couldn't fit another person on there.
Unaware of the disaster that was about to unfold, they stepped onto the escalator.
And we probably got a good halfway down, maybe a little bit past halfway. And
yeah.
It was crowded. People were backed up, back to back, all full. And about here, we heard this funny noise, like a metallic clicking sound, and then it just let go. It just kept getting faster and faster. You see people kind of stacking up at the bottom. You're riding like this, and it was a little bit unnerving. You're not expecting it. At some point, I was in front, so I got thrown off the side. It was over there, so I got thrown out and ended up kind of tumbling on the ground.
Fortunately, John was thrown clear of the crowds. But when he turned around, his wife Leslie was trapped beneath a barrage of bodies.
It kind of threw me forward, and I was right here, and then people started falling on top of me.
And I turned around and went back in and pulled her out first, and then went back, and there's another, I remember a young girl and her mom. I just remember pulling her out.
There was a lot of screaming and people panicking.
When a situation like this unfolds, the problem you've got is that firstly, nobody's quite sure what's happening, so it induces panic. You don't really have time to assess the scenario. You just know that all of a sudden people are falling on top of you. Secondly, you would have to have a really stern resilience level to be able to figure that out as quickly as you'd require to stop yourself ending up under people. So you're very reliant in this scenario on people outside of the event knowing, assessing and changing what's happening, i.e. turning the escalator off. But that takes time, and what you see in this clip is that it doesn't happen very quickly, and that would be terrifying.
We really got out of the fray, kind of gathered. I remember being somewhere over in this rail, this section, and really by then we're just kind of processing what just happened. But then we just kind of moved along, and we went on and got on our train and
then
moved
we
on.
heard about it on the news later that day.
They made a claim that the escalator had the brakes come on in an emergency, then it lurched and people fell.
But we never found out what the actual cause was.
For an escalator to go into free fall mode like that, that has to be a fairly catastrophic failure of a component. And then, as I say, the brake hasn't engaged either. And the momentum and then has got the escalator moving and the people are all tumbling off the bottom.
The Washington Metro confirmed the incident was caused by brake failure due to the weight and unusually large numbers of passengers aboard the escalator at the time.
Initially, I was a little bit wary about getting back on the escalator, but as time went on, I realized that that wasn't it's kind of a weird freak accident, and that probably the likelihood of that happening again was probably very rare. So I convinced myself that to get back on it again.
What makes these incidents so rare is that escalators are fitted with a number of measures that should prevent them.
There's the obvious safety features that you've got, which is the visual awareness, there's signage, there's the yellow demarcation on the steps, there's cone plates, there's lighting, there's handrails, but then there's all these safety features that you don't see and you shouldn't see, and they're the safety devices inside the escalator to make sure that mechanically it works correctly, and should something happen, then the safety switches to stop the escalator and prevent injury.
Escalators have been with us for over 100 years and are considered to be one of the safest modes of transport on the planet.
Around 1 million escalators in service in the world, about 8 billion journeys per day and that's roughly the distance from here to Mars.
There's a coefficient that we use of about 0.2 accidents per escalator, and if you put that into context of how many people are riding on an escalator per year, that actually equates to probably the likelihood of you having an accident on an escalator of about 1 in 13 million.
An escalator uses a conveyor belt to continuously pull steps around, and a ski lift uses the same principle to pull about chairs, like an escalator in the sky. But when these go wrong, the results can be equally terrifying, as Edward Carroll found out in March 2018.
So we went on a ski holiday to a place called Gudari, which is in Georgia, which is a little country nestled between Turkey and Russia.
After a run of bad weather, he was determined to make the most of a good day. But it turned out to be memorable for all the wrong reasons.
So we woke up that morning, pulled back the curtains, and it was blue sky and fresh snow everywhere, and had our breakfast and went straight down out of the resort into the first chairlift, up the series of lifts to the top of the mountain. We had one run down this amazing, beautiful face, and then when we got to the bottom of it, with no one else really in sight, we noticed that another chairlift had opened up that had been closed all week, this far-off, advanced, experts-only chairlift, and we thought, right, this has been closed all week, it's our last day here, let's do it. So we had one beautiful run down that, and we ended up back in the lineup at the bottom of that chairlift, and by this time the crowds had kind of built up, and it was quite a slow-moving line. We got to the front of the line and the chairlift stopped. And it was at that point in time that the chairlift started going backwards. It started moving back slowly and then started picking up speed, and that was kind of when it all kicked off. I've worked in a ski resort before. I used to operate chairlifts in a resort called Thredbo in Australia many years ago, and I've seen chairlifts go backwards before. They're quite often driven backwards by the operator if there's something wrong and they need to unload people from the chairlift. As they started picking up speed, that was when we knew something was terribly wrong.
Helmet camera footage captures what should have been a slow-moving ski lift, spinning into a frenzy.
In this event, it appears that the braking system has failed, and I'm not sure why the emergency stop was not operated.
In fact, the emergency stop button was activated, but the chairlift continued to malfunction.
You can hear me shouting, jump off, get off. Jump off! Because I knew that that was the safest option for people to do. Jump off that chairlift into the soft snow beneath and roll out of the way of the oncoming further chairs. And some people, luckily, did do that.
What you see is that very, very quickly, people form a strategy, because there's quite a lot of people there, which means that there's a lot of volume and a lot of noise. They instantly know that this crash scenario is going to be really dangerous, it's going to kill people. So the motivation is very clear, which is to protect the people on the ski lifts coming down. And what's great is because somebody hears and anticipates that they need to take some action and they jump down, that gives a message to everybody behind them.
But not everyone got the message.
The speed was picking up, they were getting a lot faster, and people weren't able to jump off in time. People sort of going flying off it. There was no control here. The chairs were going backwards, not only going back up the hill with some people still on them, but then they started to get caught inside the station and caused a big pile up with people underneath. It was a pretty scary thing to witness. And at the time we didn't know if there were survivors, there were injuries, we had no idea. It was chaos. Everyone sort of started milling back from the area as the chairs kept slamming into each other, and eventually they built up enough of a log jam that was what caused the lift to stop. All the people around were in disarray, shouting and screaming and crying. We did see people knocked out cold, lying beneath this mass of wreckage. And I did look, later on, it turned out there was some minor injuries and a couple of people were airlifted to hospital, but shockingly and luckily, no one died and no one even had a serious injury. As far as I'm aware, everyone's made a complete recovery, which is, really good.
In an ironic twist, Ed had at one time been given an insight into how dangerous a chairlift can be.
When I worked as a lift operator in Thredbo. They showed us a training video of a chairlift being run backwards at high speed, somewhere in the US, and it's a chairlift shaking itself to death, basically. The chairs go flying off and the towers are wobbling and the cable's spinning and then it snaps. And I remember watching it and thinking, I hope that I never have to see something like that. I don't want to be involved with that. It was a real shocker. I thought I was going to see that happen, but in real life with real people in the middle of nowhere in Georgia. So it's a pretty scary kind of environment.
News reports state that the accident was down to a number of errors. Initially, there was a voltage drop, and then the operator failed to switch to a backup generator. But no explanation was given for the ski lift traveling in reverse at speed.
You can't help but feel the coincidence that exists, that there's a lift engineer, that when they first started training, they were shown a video that demonstrated this kind of horrific incident, and then being there to watch this kind of tragedy unfold. I mean, in your head, you'd just be thinking, well, I know what they're going to be showing to all the interns and the lift engineers from now on, aren't you?
Whether found in the snowy mountains or in the city, many people around the world suffer from escalophobia, a fear of escalators. Worries of becoming trapped or of mechanical parts physically grabbing hold of people might seem irrational, but for children in particular, these dangers aren't so far-fetched. In this Chinese shopping center, a child is playing about on an escalator when suddenly his hand gets trapped. The emergency services try several different techniques to pull the boy free. And in the end, they resort to using heavy machinery to pry open the steps so they can extricate his hand. He's then taken to hospital to assess any damage. But it's not just the sides of escalators where children's limbs can be trapped. In this alarming clip, we can see a toddler lying face down traveling the wrong way up an escalator. As they reach the top, the child becomes pinned down as his hand is sucked into the escalator. The other child tries to help, but doesn't think to hit the emergency stop button. All the while, the toddler's hand is still trapped.
In an incident like that, if everybody knows what they're supposed to do, even from very small children, that would have been far less serious.
Eventually, the child's cries draws the attention of an adult who hits the emergency switch. When more help arrives, it's clear to see how firmly wedged the child's fingers have become. Luckily, the toddler only sustained minor injuries.
Those clips both make me wince because I'm a mother, and you just know that firstly, the harm that they're going to potentially cause themselves, but secondly, the distress that a child's going to be in is going to be really large. So it's every mother's worst nightmare.
Escalator manufacturers do have safety measures in place to prevent accidents like these from occurring.
So this is a cone plate. You have these at the threshold between the moving steps and the landing areas of the escalator as you step off. As you can see, they mesh together very, very closely. The reason behind that is to stop fingers and shoes becoming entrapped. If they do become entrapped, there's a safety device within the cone bearer plate, which is the area of the landing that the cone mounts to. You can hear it clicking there, so that's the safety switch activating. So it activates on lift. It also activates when it's pushed backwards, and that will stop the escalator, hopefully before any kind of entrapment.
Despite the industry's safeguards, there is still room for error.
If we look at this area, first of all, there's normally brush guards here, which aren't on this one, which help keep you away from these gaps here. But you can see that there have to be gaps, there has to be a tolerance here for it to run. These tolerances are kept as small as possible, but there is still room. You could easily get a baby's finger or a child's finger stuck in between there, and that pressure is not going to be enough to activate the switch, which then turns off the escalator.
But it doesn't have to be something as big as a trapped limb to cause problems. It can be as small as a piece of string. At a supermarket in China's Henan province, a young girl trips as she steps off a moving walkway because her shoelace has been sucked under the cone plate. She falls, struggling to the floor, while distressed shoppers try desperately to stop themselves from piling on top of her. As a result of this ordeal, the lady suffered bruises on her hand and leg.
Very small items, shoelaces, bits of string, parts of your scarf, it may be very difficult for those sensors to detect them because they're not a perfect situation. We have to rely partly on the safety features and partly also on members of the public to use escalators responsibly.
This girl was lucky. People were on hand to help. But if there's no one around, the results can be tragic. It's early morning in Seattle, and this man is heading home after a night's drinking. He can be seen staggering around the bus terminal before making his way down to catch a lift home. About 3/4 of the way down the escalator, he loses his balance and falls on his back. Unable to get up in time, the drawstring of his hoodie somehow gets snagged in the escalator, pinning him to the stairs.
What we believe happened is it probably got caught down the side of the step and then was dragged along until it got caught in the mechanism here, where it had nowhere to go other than tighten.
A couple of strangers pass, but unaware of the seriousness of the situation, don't stop to help. By the time someone does come to his aid, it's already too late. And despite the efforts of the emergency services, the man was pronounced dead, suffocated by his hoodie's drawstring.
You can understand how it could get caught in the machine and the machine continues to move. And without somebody there to stop it quickly, has just strangled him.
Following a wrongful death lawsuit, it was discovered that this particular escalator was in poor condition, and certain safety devices were never triggered. The man's family was awarded $1 million by the county. The escalator company also paid an undisclosed amount. As a form of moving transport, the escalator is firmly embedded into our environment. It was created in America in 1895 as a novelty ride. People would come from far and wide to straddle the moving stairs for amusement. And today, it's still seen as a tempting fun ride, especially for children. In this clip from Turkey, a 4-year-old is playing by himself when he grabs onto the handrail on the outside of the escalator. With no one noticing, he begins to ascend, becoming more in danger the higher he climbs. It's at this point, shopkeeper Ali Apari spots the child and quickly runs to see what's happening. As the child helplessly approaches the top of the escalator, there are only seconds left before there's nothing to hold on to.
Typical escalator is at least 16 to 18 feet above the ground. And a small child falling that distance, generally you're not going to survive a fall of much more than 10 feet.
As the handrail turns, he drops 15 feet, straight into the arms of Ali Apari below.
How that's even possible, many escalators have an additional barrier that sticks out about 10 feet after the bottom of it to actually stop small children from doing this.
We walk around in our lives with an idea of how everything is meant to be. So if something out of context occurs, it takes time to process. And it's just one person who kind of from a distance notices this is out of context, but this is a real threat to this child. That really saves the day.
And the allure of moving machinery could have also proved fatal for this 9-month-old baby. Here she's seen unsupervised in a stroller in a shopping center in eastern China. Strolling towards the edge, with no idea of the danger she's in. Until she tumbles directly onto the moving stairway. Fortunately, she's rescued by a passerby and given back to her mother, who is now fully aware of her baby's plight. Luckily, she only sustained light injuries.
This is just horrible, but there is also another side to that as to how could you potentially see something like this happening. And really, even with sensors, it would be very difficult to actually prevent a child falling off the top like that.
We can't put barriers on the end of escalators for that one child every 10 years who's going to be in a walker and unfortunately get hurt. There's no way to prevent people from not being good parents.
The Lift and Escalator Industry Association has been running a safety campaign with schools, with shopping centre operators, aimed at the younger children, advising them how to use escalators safely. And really it's just trying to get the message out there that an escalator's, it's not a toy, it's not a fairground ride, it's a safe means of getting from one floor to another quickly and conveniently, but please, 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 keep your kids away.
Despite manufacturers trying to educate us about the right way to use an escalator and displaying prominent signs to remind us, some people choose to ignore them, putting themselves and others in danger. When this lady momentarily lets go of her suitcase, it crashes to the bottom. This man was lucky to get away, but the person behind gets the full force of the tumbling suitcase, knocking her to the ground. And it's not an isolated incident. In this next clip from China, a passenger steps onto the escalator with her luggage. In an instant, the suitcase slips from her grasp, careening into the lady below, causing her to land on her back. The force was so great, it fractured her spine and left her bedbound for weeks.
This is just straightforward carelessness. There will be signs everywhere, as you can see at the top of the escalator, telling you to hold on to your luggage, and really those people on the escalator didn't have a chance of avoiding that.
If you just have your carry-on over your shoulder, not a problem. But when you have something wheeled, you'll see on all these signs, and you see them all over the US and UK, no wheeled vehicles. Don't take your wheelchair on there. Don't take your baby carriage on. Take the elevator when you have situations such as that.
Despite all these warnings, it still doesn't stop some people defying common sense. And since the dawn of the smartphone, it's easy to capture these moments, whether calamitous or just plain dangerous. In this clip, which went viral, we see a member of the Swiss Winter Olympic team showing off as he travels one-handed up the outside of an escalator and effortlessly vaults over the top.
There are so many things that could happen here and could go wrong, and you can see on this escalator again, it doesn't have a barrier. If we misuse equipment in this way, machines in this way, it will end in tears.
Especially if you're under the influence. On the 20th of December, Freddie Andrews was out watching the darts live with friends.
Before we got there, we was all drinking beforehand, and then when we got there, we wanted some beer. But the beer wasn't just normal beers, it was a jug, which is like 4 pints. And once it kicked in, well, it just took over, and the devil in me, I suppose, come out. I'm known for doing silly stuff, so once the darts finished, around 10:30, walked into Wood Green station. There was all like, oh, Fred, I dare to go down the escalator, and you know, but we was already halfway down the escalator when they started saying it, so it's a bit too late to go down that one. It's when we went to London Bridge and we saw the second escalator.
At over 20 metres long, London Bridge has one of the longest escalators on the London Underground system.
I was drunk, wasn't thinking straight, I was just in a joking mood. So when we saw the escalator, when they said I dared to go down it, the sober me would be like, no way. The drunk me was, sounds like a lot of fun. I've always wanted to do it, to be honest. See like an all slide, you think that's fun. That's just a bigger slide, isn't it?
But no sooner had Freddie climbed up than things slid out of control.
I caught myself on the first box. So when I hit it, I tried to get off, but no, it kind of turned me around. It was now the rest of the way. I put both hands out, and it sank so sharp through my hands. It hurt more to stop myself than it did going down the escalator. And that's when I went straight forward and bounced like a diver. When I did do a flip, what's going through my head was, I just really hope I land this well. And obviously I did the worst possible. I banged my head on the escalator.
These are the ultimate stupidities. There's nothing the industry can do if someone's going to do something stupid on their escalator.
In studies, we've found that men are bigger risk takers than women. They don't really rationalise with logic what could happen, so the immediate gratification of doing something a little bit crazy can be enough to make them throw themselves down, as in this clip, an escalator. But the problem there is that's also why more men die.
I had cuts all the way up here, up both arms, both legs, and I've still got a scar mark on my knee, but I didn't feel hurt or pain.
I don't even know how to be able to walk. I mean, quite frankly, this is YouTube stupid.
And social media is exactly where it went.
8 hours, there's about 20,000 views. But then within an hour and a half, there was 1.5 million. And then within 24 hours, there was 12.5 million views. It was just mad reaction. I didn't expect it. I was happy with just 20,000 views.
Despite his overnight fame, Freddie realises the error of his ways.
Stupid what I'd done. I wouldn't ever do it again. I would advise no one else to do it.
He's so lucky, I'd like him to pick my lottery tickets for me.
This is why people win the Darwin Award, isn't it?
As our towns and cities expand, the demand for escalators will continue to rise.
We're seeing a massive growth in urbanisation. I mean, it's happening all around the world, particularly in the developing countries. The number of escalators installed in China alone is something like 45,000 a year and growing. Railway stations, shopping centres, airports, they just would not function without escalators.
And as this demand grows, these machines will become more sophisticated.
In the future, it's very likely that escalators will have considerably more sensors on them. They will have sensors that detect people approaching them if something is trapped, and they'll have sensors that detect if something is approaching them perhaps in the wrong direction. So they will collect all of this information and they'll communicate that back to a computer, which in our smart cities of the future will send people to fix escalators, hopefully before accidents happen.
Advancements in technology could see escalators becoming curved or even flexible. But for all of them to be safe, it will require us to use them responsibly.
They will be a part of our everyday lives and we have to know how to use them properly, or else we're going to see more accidents like this, whether it's dropping a suitcase, whether it's people trying to do stunts in the urban environment, not understanding the potential of the consequences, or whether it's accidents happening to small children. We need to make sure that we keep ourselves and everybody else as safe as possible.